I changed a few things since the previous tutorial. The scale of his antenna, the scale of his arms, his body, and I also changed the angle of the legs, and this just gives him a more stylized look. We're going to begin by giving him an armature. So hit Shift A, come down to Armature and select Single Bone. Go into Side View mode and set this bone that was created flat on the y-axis. So since we can't get it perfectly flat, what we can do is hit N to bring up the Properties panel, and under Transform, set both the Z values for the head and tail to 0, and that will just put it flat. Now let's just bring this to the back of the feet, and this bone will be our root bone. So let's go ahead and give it a name, root. Now go back into front view mode, hit Shift A to create a new bone, and we're just gonna drag this up along the Z axis. There we go. And this is going to be kind of our torso bone. Oops. There we go. And then hit E to extrude along the Z, and E to extrude once more. And this will be our torso, our head, and the antenna. Okay, now let's go ahead and create a clavicle. So, the collarbones. So just rotate that into place, like that. Let's see. Something kind of like that. And just extrude out to the elbow, extrude to the wrist, and give him a hand. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. A lot of this will be adjusted once, oops, there we go. Once we go in and start actually playing with the different parts of him. Okay. Now let's go ahead and create a leg. So just take his torso bone and duplicate that, rotate it around. We're kind of going to create an anchor right here, and then extrude down to about his knee, then his ankle, and finally his foot. Okay. Oops. There we go. And that should be good. Next step, we are going to go ahead and take these and flip them over. So using box select and then hit Control period, and what that'll do is, or just hit period, there you go, and that will just set the pivot point to 3D cursor. If we go ahead, hit Shift D to duplicate, and then mirror, or Control M for mirror, and hit X, that will just flip it over. Now if we go over here, we can see that the naming is wrong. Shoot. Let's delete this and actually go ahead and name all of these bones. So I'm just going to expand the outliner and the armature. So we've got our root bone here. The next bone will be our torso. Next bone will be our clavicle. Dot, let's see, that'll be his right side. No, his left side. So clavicle dot L. I guess upper arm dot L. Forearm dot L, and finally his hand dot L. Okay. And then here we're gonna have our leg anchor dot L. I don't know if I spelled that right. Probably not. Just a sec. I'm gonna look up how to spell that. Okay, I spelled it correctly. Okay, so his upper leg dot L, his lower leg dot L, and finally his foot dot L, and we still have to go up the torso. So head and finally antenna. Okay, so now that these are named properly, we can go ahead and just flip them over. So duplicate, Control M, X, and that will just mirror. And now we will see that it says clavicle.L.001, and it'll be the same for each of these bones. And it would be a pain to just go ahead and rename all of these. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit W and flip names. And what this will do, it'll take that .L.001 and replace it with a .R. So all of these are fixed now. Handy little tool. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to set up some parents. So I believe we take this guy and set his parent to the torso, and that'll create this dashed line. We're going to need to add a new bone down here. So hit Control comma just to put the pivot point back to normal. So rotate along the Y 180 degrees, and this guy needs to be, I guess, the hips, and we're going to set this guy's parent to hips and set them to being connected. So now the leg anchors are going to have their parent be hips, not connected. I think we can just hit Control P. No. There, no. Ah. Alt P. No, Control P. Never mind. Set this guy hips. And then this one to torso. Awesome. Now if we go over into the pose mode by hitting Control Tab, we can take the bones and drag them around. Kinda cool. And as you see, only the bones that are parented, are above the parent scale, are affected by the rotation. So we can see this more clearly over here. So if I go ahead and select the hips, everything that is above the hips in the outline will be affected. So if we rotate this now, everything except for the root bone will be affected, and that is true. If we select the torso, everything that is above the torso, so all the clavicles, the head, the antenna, all that stuff, all the arms, those will be affected, and that is true. And if we select the leg anchor, we can adjust the entire leg, and it works for the other leg too. Now, since nothing is parented to the actual root bone, what we're going to have to do is just take our hips bone and give him a parent. So tab back into edit mode, give it a parent, and we're just going to set this to root. And now, in pose mode, we can adjust the entire thing using our root bone. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and set up, first uncheck the deform because for the root bone, because it's the only bone that really won't be doing any deformation of the mesh. Also, I don't think the hips are going to be deforming anything, so uncheck that. I'm just going to bring this down along the Z. Right there. Okay. So that is looking pretty good. And we will work on the vector, or the vertex groups Next. Now we're going to go ahead and assign the armature to the mesh and set up the vertex groups. To do this, what we're going to do is we're going to select, or go into object mode if it's in pose mode, select our armature, and I believe select the object that you want to attach it to, and hit Control P, or no, select the object and then the armature, hit Control P, and under here select with empty groups. And now what you'll notice is nothing happens. Awkward. No. Uncheck bone envelopes for one, and then come over here to the vertex groups, and you'll see that you have all these vertex groups, and they're all empty. What we're going to want to do though is we're going to want to attach it to the head, so assign it to the head. I'm just going to hide the rest because we don't need them. Okay, and now if we rotate the head, the eyes will rotate too. That is how we assign the object to a mesh, or assign an object to an armature. Also, if you come over here to the modifiers, you'll notice that we now have an armature modifier, whereas we don't here. And what this does is it allows us to essentially assign it and check how things are going to be done. So like we've got bone envelopes, which basically is an envelope that, or it's an area around the bone where the bone will have an effect, and it's just kind of a suggestion. I haven't really ever gotten it to work very well, maybe a little bit in fingers, but other than that it doesn't seem to work that well, so I mostly just use vertex groups. Also, instead of being in octahedral mode, what we want is B-bone, because then we can take this antenna bone up here, and where is that? Come over to the bone properties and turn up the segments. And now, if we rotate this, you can see that it bends differently, more like a spine, not like a stick. And that's just kind of a cool thing. I don't think it works in octahedral mode, so, or in other modes. So, it might, I don't know. It's easier to see in B-bone mode though. Okay, so now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go through and assign vertex groups to all of these. So just select the object, select the bone or the armature, parent, empty groups, empty groups. Just do this for all of the objects. Oops. Empty groups and empty groups. And I think that should be all of them. It's parented to the armature, armature. Okay, good. The next job is a bit tedious, so I may just skip ahead and get it done with the recorder paused. What we have to do is we just have to go through and select all of these vertexes and apply them to the correct vertex group. So I will be back when I finish that, and we can continue from there. I've finished setting up the vertex groups. You won't notice any changes until you switch into the weight paint mode. So let's do that now. In weight paint mode, you will notice that the different parts, or the at least the parts of the object, have different colors. So let's go over the vertex groups on the arm so that you can see how I've assigned things. So switch over to vertex group. Starting at the clavicle and working down, you'll notice that I have assigned different colors, and here's what they mean. The red means that it is 100% assigned to this vertex group. The well, you don't see it in this instance, but yellow is 75%, green is 50%, and the cyan color is 25%, and finally the dark blue is 0. So as we move down, you can see that I have actually overlapped these two vertex groups, and this is acceptable because it helps blend the movements better when animating. So you want to do that. Yeah, it helps blend things. So here is the forearm. So the very tip there is completely red, so completely assigned, and fades out. And then the other side is exactly the same, just mirrored. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the hand. The hand, if we go into edit mode, are two separate meshes, and they are part of the same object. I've just assigned each hand to hand.l and hand.r respectively. Having the meshes separate is not necessary, and I've demonstrated this in the feet. The feet still have the mirror modifier applied. So if we hide that, one of the feet disappears, or the foot disappears. But we can rotate each one separately. So what I've done here is I've actually just applied the left foot, I believe, yeah, the left foot, and then by having the foot.r in the stack of vertex groups, Blender is able to figure out, based on the naming scheme, that this left foot, or the right foot here, should be listening to this vertex group, which is really pretty helpful. An example of when you'd want to use this, it's not really necessary with something like the foot, which is 100% assigned, but for like the arm, you'd probably want to use this instead of having to manually go and assign all of these vertexes, or all of these vertex groups, which have interesting colors and can be screwed up. Now that we have finished assigning everything to the bones, we are able to move each body part. So we can bend the arms and the hand and turn stuff. And yeah, we are able to move the body around with the rig. Adjusting each bone manually is called forward kinematics, or FK rigging. This is tedious, slow, and it tends to lead to blocky motions. We can fix this by switching to IK rigging, or inverse kinematics, which uses a target to calculate the angles and the positions that each bone has to go to. In this next section, we're going to be setting up IK rigs. So go into top view mode, tab into edit mode, and make sure that x-axis mirror is turned on. And we're just going to begin with the hands. Extrude along the y-axis from this wrist bone right there, or the joint right there, and just pull that back a little bit more. Hit Alt-P, clear parent. Let's just pull this, actually just leave it right there, and you'll see with this x-axis mirror turned on, it will have created another one over here, and it will act exactly the same. Let's go ahead and delete the 0.001. I'm just going to rename it forearm, maybe forearm control, or actually no, let's try arm target. There we go. And rename this one arm target. Okay. And now, if I recall, we tab into pose mode, select the bone here, and then the target bone, hit Shift-I, and give it a, wait, no, here, let me turn on screencast keys. There we go. And so select the target, then the bone, hit Shift-I, and that will give it an IK. Now if you drag around the target, you'll notice that it doesn't act quite right. This can be lots of fun, but it's not what we want. So what we do, go over into the bone constraints for the IK and turn up the chain length to 2. And that basically just defines how far back along the chain, or back along the hierarchy, the IK effect will work. So with an IK length of 1, only this bone will be affected. With 4, it will start getting back further, and I think it will affect, let's see, 1, 2, 3, it'll affect the torso right there. Nah, don't want that. There we go. So now let's just go ahead and do this to the other bone. So Shift-I, there we go. And 0 obviously goes all the way back to the very first bone. So we don't want to do that. So now we have some control over our hands. There we go. But you notice that sometimes we can turn the elbow back and make it bend in a strange way. So let's go ahead and fix that now. So go ahead, select the joint, the elbow joint, create a new one. The x-axis mirror will do the work for you over here. Hit Alt-P, clear parent, and drag this one back pretty far. You want this one, the target, to be connected to the hands, but not parented or anything. But you want the controller to be pretty far back. So let's go ahead and give these bones names. So elbow control dot L, elbow control dot R, and now tab into pose mode, select this bone here, Shift-I, give it an IK, and set the chain length to 1. Do that again over here, Shift-I, chain length to 1, and now you can see that we have control over where the elbow is facing. Also, if you start getting weird bends in here, in the arm, if I can select it, there you go, you can come over here and put a subsurf in, and that'll help clean up the wrinkling. You can also say preserve volume, and that will just keep it the same size instead of getting weirdly shaped. So I don't know, whichever looks better to you. And that is looking pretty good. So let's just Alt-G, there we go. And now we will do the exact same thing to the legs. So tab into edit mode, select this guy right here, hit E to extrude along the Y, Alt-P, clear parent, and then let's rename them. So leg target dot L and leg target dot R. So select Shift-I, done, oops, Shift-I, and now we can play with these a little bit. Set the chain length to 2. Chain length to 2. Tab back into edit mode. Create a new bone. Let's Alt-P. Clear parent. Pull that out pretty far. And let's call this knee control.L and knee control.R. Okay. And pretty much the exact same step as with the elbow. Shift I. And then chain length to 1. Shift I. Chain length to 1. Okay, so now if we go ahead and take this, we can have pretty good control over the knees. So say we want to have him spread his knees out a little bit more, we can just, oops, not the root, we can play around with the direction of his knees. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. Let's do one more bone up here for controlling his antenna. So there we go. Alt-P, clear parent, GZ, and then we go into edit or pose mode, select this control bone here, and the ball bone, hit Shift I, give it an IK. Let's turn that down to 2. And now we have some pretty good control over the antenna. I'm going to rename this bone antenna control, or target. Yeah. Okay. So that should pretty well do it for the rigging of this character. Next tutorial we will get into animating him, giving him a walk cycle and maybe a run cycle, and if we have time, maybe let's have him jump or something like that. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and see you next time.